the blood of the Lamb. Did somebody say yes? Yeah. Page 4.
And it doesn't have a verse on the next page also.
I think is what all of us have been going through as individuals, and what the country's going through is this whole thing of fear that embroils all of us many times. It's the most commonly repeated phrase in the whole Bible. Both Old Testament and New Testament talks about having no fear, or do not be afraid. And it's a really difficult thing, I think, to grasp and to really understand how we can do that, because there's, again, so many things that happen in our lives that cause us to be fearful. But the one thing is, as you read on through this, the other common theme that people should fear is the fear of the Lord, not of anything else. It really is not, we don't need to be afraid of anything that transpires in our lives, in the world, and it's totally it's the fear of the Lord. But a lot of times people misinterpret that, or all of us do, in thinking that that is the type of fear that we carry with us in a worldly fashion. It's really not. If you look at the second bullet point on there, it's good to have the fear of the Lord, but fear is not meant to be a terrified expectation or punishment, but rather it's a sense of a reverential type of respect, similar to and even greater than what we would have for the person in legitimate authority, or a parent, or any religious leader. It's that type of exercise that we want to go through in the fear of the Lord. So I can remember as a child growing up, and I can remember my dad and I would wrestle around and the floor, and we just have a great time doing that. And I remember at some age, I don't remember how old I was, but I remember I realized that I could beat him, that I don't mean beat him physically, but I could out wrestle him and I could pin him down and whatnot. And it wasn't any fun after that, you know. It wasn't the same. You just quit doing it. And it was the respect that you had for a parent, much like the respect that God is asking us to have for Him, and the fear that we go through. And if we look at each day, I don't know how everyone starts their day, but as you look at your day in the beginning of the day and sensing and feeling what the path that God has planned for you and what He has in store for that path that you're going to walk for that particular day, it really is exciting to know that He has that all planned for us. And so many times I think we forget that that's what we get to do if we stay focused and if we keep that proper fear that we should have. It's not, I mean, He tells us we don't even need to fear stepping on a serpent as we read through the different verses. So there's so many verses that deal with fear, and I've just given you a few of them on here. But maybe we'll start back at the beginning. Let's look at Genesis 15:1. Afterwards, Jehovah spoke to Abram in a vision, and this is what He said to him: "Don't be fearful." There it is. Don't be fearful, Abram, for I will defend you, and I will give you great blessings. So Abram replied, and this is what we do so many times, I think. We want something else from what we feel God has told us. So Abram's now negotiating, a little bit. You see the next, starting in verse 2. But Abram replied, "O Lord Jehovah, what good are all your blessings when I have no son? For without a son, some other member of my household will inherit all my wealth." So in verse 4, Jehovah told him, no one else will be your heir, for you will have a son to inherit everything you own. So there was an arrangement that began to be made when they realized that he did not have to fear, because he had, as you go through the whole story, he put a lot of credence in the wealth that he had amassed and accumulated and so forth, which I think is what a lot of people put more emphasis on what they're putting away somewhere, not realizing that we're really not taking it with us anywhere. I mean, it's staying here. It's part of what we're talking about when you come to a Bible study like this and realize the really unique quality of this group that's here. This is way beyond an average Bible study. Rick has told us that over and over and over, and I'm not sure that we all really appreciate that as much as we could. The depth and the knowledge that I think a lot of us grew up in church background, church surrounding and so forth, but it's never been as deep, at least for us, as it's been in the time that we've got to spend with Him, and how He is dug into God's Word in such a special way. So now we begin to see the building of not being afraid of anything. So let's go on to Genesis 26:24. Let's start with verse 12 and just kind of get a flavor of what's going on. That year Isaac's crops were tremendous, 100 times the grain he sowed. For Jehovah blessed him. He was soon a man of great wealth, became richer and richer. He had large flocks of sheep, goats, great herds of cattle, and many servants. And the Philistines became jealous of him. So they filled up his wells with earth, all those dug by the servants of his father Abraham. And King Amalek asked Isaac to leave the country. "Go somewhere else," he said, "for you have become too rich and too powerful for us." So Isaac moved to Gir Valley. It's not Deer Valley, that's Deer Valley. Maybe he did. And lived there instead. And Isaac redug the wells of his father Abraham, the ones the Philistines had filled with after his father's death, and gave them the same names they had before. When his father had named them, his shepherds also dug a new well at Deer Valley and found a gushing underground spring. Then the local shepherds came and claimed it. "This is our land and our well," they said, and argued over it with Isaac's herdsmen. So he named the well of argument. Isaac's men then dug another well, but again there was a fight over it. So he called it the well of anger. abandoning that one, he dug again, and the local residents finally let him alone. So he called it the well of Rumina for us at last. For now at last, he said, the Lord has made room for us, and we shall thrive. So here we pick up again on not being afraid. When he went to Beersheba, Jehovah appeared to him on the night of his arrival. I am the God of Abraham your father, he said. Fear not, for I am with you, and will bless you, and will give you so many descendants that they will become a great nation because of my presence, or my promise to Abraham who obeyed me. So again, you had somebody who really had a knowledge and a relationship with God. And as he began to deal with him and explain to him what he needed to do, he never lost that faith in him. He never lost the direction that he was headed in. And he never gave up on what it was, the path that God had put him on. So even though he was run out of different parts of the country that he was living in and involved in, he still maintained the fear of God, but yet God told him that was really all he needed to be worried about. So let's go then to Genesis 46:3. 46:3. So let's start up at verse 1. So Israel set out with all his possessions and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices there to the God of his father Isaac. During the night, God spoke to him in a vision. Jacob, Jacob, he called. Yes, Jacob answered. I am God, the voice replied, the God of your father. Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt, for you will see to it for I will see to it that you become a great nation there. And I will go down with you into Egypt, and I will bring your descendants back again, but you shall die in Egypt, and Joseph at your side. So the beginning of what we see as the Exodus is starting to happen here. We see that God is preparing multitudes that the Israelites were developing, and now he's beginning to set the stage for what's going to happen down the road. But he still is telling them, you can't be afraid of what is going to happen as you march down this road. There's going to be a lot of things that I think all of us, as we have gotten into God's Word and we look at what the type of things that God instructed his people to do as far as taking and going to war with the different nations and telling them to kill everything that was there, it's always kind of makes you pause a minute and say, wow, is that really our God that is asking them to do that? And there was always a reason behind that. There was a reason that he had for them to do that. And there's always some reason that God is telling us the things that we should do if we would just listen. It's that still quiet voice that we don't take the moment to listen to. As Rick has described this, I think, the reason that we had 2 ears and 1 mouth is that we need to be doing a better job of listening than we do of speaking. And so many times, if you walk and this walk on earth today, you see a lot of people like that. We see it in our country today. You see a lot of talking heads, and we don't see enough people who really are listening to what God is telling them to do. So again, the stage is being set for what God has as a plan. All right, we're going to go to Exodus 14. Exodus 14. Let's start back at verse 10. As the Egyptian army approached the people of Israel, the people of Israel saw them from afar and in the distance speeding towards them. And they were terribly frightened and cried out to the Lord to help them. And then they turned against Moses, whining. Have you brought us out here to die in the desert because there were not enough graves for us in Egypt? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Isn't this what you told us while we were slaves to leave us alone? We said it might be better to be slaves to the Egyptians than dead in the wilderness. But verse 12 then, but Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Just stand where you are and watch, and you will see the wonderful way the Lord will rescue you today. The Egyptians you are looking at, I love this verse. The Egyptians you're looking at you will never see them again. So, when you really, so many times I think as I've read these stories through the years and so forth, and I think so many times we think, geez, these are great stories. But then when you realize the truth behind them, you realize that they really happened. This wasn't just some novel that somebody wrote, but these things really, really happened. The parting of the sea, all the things that he's talking about here were going on in Exodus as they were taken to the promised land, and we know the stories of how they would not pay attention and would not listen to Moses as the Lord was telling them to go ahead and possess the land and take it. So as that begins to unfold, and he's telling them, you can do this, you don't have to be afraid. But yet they still were. And I think so many times that's the thing that grips us. We know we shouldn't be afraid, but yet we still have that lingering, fear there somewhere that, gosh, I didn't treat that person right, I wasn't giving enough, I didn't listen, well enough, and we miss those opportunities. So now let's go to Numbers 21, 34. There's a lot more of verses throughout the Bible that talk about the fear of the Lord and not to be afraid. So as you go back through it, it's why we're not going to be able to go through all of these tonight, but you may enjoy going back and just reading the background. It's not just the verse that is significant. It's really the story behind that. It's a story that leads up to someone. It's not always God telling them, you don't need to have any fear. It was Moses telling, or it was one of the prophets telling, to do things. And there are people today that are telling us that we do not need to be afraid. And yet, do we really listen? Do we really believe in what they're telling us? And you see people, I don't know, in our business, we're fortunate we have a really good core group of believers. But then we have some folks that are not there. So it gives us a real close-up ability, and I know all of you get to experience this too, so it's not unique to us. But we see what goes on in their life. There's just some tragedies that we watch unfolding. And we're attempting to be the instrument that we should be, want to be, want the boldness, to say, hey, we could really show you what a difference, having a relationship with Jesus Christ could make in your life. But boy, it's really hard with some people. They just have got to, it's the school of hard knocks. We've got an employee now who, I need to be careful how I say this, because this person embezzled from a major company, and her husband put her up to this, and he was involved in the same, actually not the same company, he was involved with the federal agency, and put her up to it, and they falsified some records, and it's the old double billing thing, which I think all of us who are in business are always fearful of, is that a real invoice from somebody? Did I really get that? So they did this to the tune of several $100,000 over the time, and he was so shrewd about it that he was never involved in it. He got to reap the rewards of it, got the money and whatnot, but it all fell on her. So she talks about how one day at her job, an FBI agent walked up and said, you know, I need to talk to you. And she said, she knew enough to say, I better not say anything, but she told the FBI agent, she said, I've been expecting you. And she ended up spending, how many years in prison? 3? Yeah. So how, it's so much fun to watch how the Lord works. This person had great experience, life experiences that were very unique and very different, and an ability to. And so we hired her as a consultant while she was in a halfway house. And the halfway house happened to be in Florence, which was ironic. I didn't know there was one. And so here it was. And so she would, and there's lots and lots, there's so much to it, I won't bore you with all the details, but she had to ride a bike from, because they wouldn't let her have a car, she had to ride a bike, or we had to go get her, you know, and so forth. And our business is an evening, more of an evening and a night type thing. So there was a lot of difficulties in doing it. But as we saw more and more who this person was, and the character that she really had, and realized the story of what she'd been through and how she'd been used by this husband, we said, gosh, you know, this is somebody that deserves another chance. And yet today, so anyway, we've hired her, and she's a full-time employee and so forth. But there's still not the relationship there that she should have. Is that fair to say? Okay. So she's still missing, you know, such a big ingredient of what she could be, where it could go. So, but we just never give up. When Katie and I got married, we did a premarital counseling thing with a couple, a pastor and his wife, and so forth. And they both told us, they took us aside separately and told us, hey, you guys, the problem you're going to have in life is that you're going to take in all the strays. You're going to have all these strays that are going to come into your life, and you're going to take them in. And that's proven to be the case. This is another one. And it's what?
Oh, I'm sorry, it reminded me of a friend who did the same thing.
Well,
yes.
And, you know, sometimes you say, gee, why did we do that, you know? But yet, there's so many more stories of great victories and great opportunities, and we've been able to cheer people on. But it was really trying to create in them, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be fearful of being incarcerated. You don't have to be fearful of not finding a job. You don't have to be fearful of not being able to take care of your family and so forth. And that was a lot of what the baggage that she brought with her. It's been kind of interesting to watch her. She kind of unloads that baggage along the way. We see a different person almost every day. You see a different attitude, but we're still not there. But neither are we. So we're not there either. So, but someday we will be. Yes.
Okay, there's a friend of ours that was going through the same thing when he first found the Lord, and he was bringing in every wino and everybody that he could into the house. And one time he had to leave his wife, and he didn't know that the man had just been released for a murder. And he had done his time and everything, but she's sitting there not knowing. But you see, that's the trust of the Lord. That's he had no fear. So through that, you know, it's amazing how their relationship with the Lord grew, and the people around them grew just as much.
Sure. And
so what you're doing is you're blessing them. God's giving you the opportunity to bless them, and through that, they're being blessed as well. So you have a mighty ministry.
Yes,
that is awesome.
But you sometimes wonder, you know, and you sometimes, but generally, I think the other, just kind of the last piece of not that particular story, but just in total, all of our lives, you know, like we've been married 28 years, and I would say God has blessed us in so many unique ways, but one of them is He's always brought very unique people, and I don't mean that in a sarcastic way, but talented people, and dropped them in our life at just the right time when there were things that we needed to have done, and we didn't have the skill sets and so forth to do it. Boom, somebody would walk in, knock on the door, and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job, and I'm here to. Would you hire me?" And we just happened to be looking for that. The mayor, one more time, sorry to get off on that. The mayor of Coolidge, John Thompson, grew up in Superior, and we were building the golf courses and whatnot at Gold Canyon Ranch, and we needed help doing that because you couldn't get. Apache Junction was kind of like Florence is today. It was a long way out, and to get people to come out there and so forth. And the mines went on strike, and John Thompson worked at the mines. So we had all these miners come down looking for work, and they'd knock on the door and say, "Gee, I'm a mechanic, and we happen to need a mechanic to keep equipment running." Well, I put the dynamite in the hole, and we fired up, and we needed guys to be able to. Side of the mountain building things to be able to do blasting and so forth. So we got some wonderful, wonderful, labor and help out of that. So I hadn't seen John for probably 15, 18 years and did not realize that he now was the mayor of Coolidge. And so he walked up to me one day, maybe a year and a half ago, and said, "Gosh, you probably don't remember me." I said, "Well, I wish I did." But so he started describing how we had met and what had occurred in his life at the time and whatnot. And it's just amazing the touches that you can have on people as you go through. And he said, and he used the term, he says, "I was really fearful because I could not provide for my family. And I didn't have a means to do that." So you don't realize you're doing it, but you take that fear away from people by offering them an opportunity to work, to do whatever it is, or whether it's a ride, whatever it might be. So anyway, I ramble. I don't mean to sound like Rick, but so let's go. Don't take that off. Okay, so let's go to Numbers 21:14, 21:34. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is a great story of Moses sending the spies out to look at the land and telling them to possess the land. While Israel was there in the Amorite country, Moses sent spies to look over the Jezreel area. He followed up with an armored attack, capturing all the towers and driving out the Amorites. They next turned their attention to the city of Bashan, where King Og of Bashan met them with his army of Idrith. The Lord told Moses not to fear, that the enemy was already conquered. The same thing will happen to King Og as happened to King Sihon at Hezbollah. The Lord assured him, and sure enough, Israel was victorious, and King Og, his sons, and his subjects, so that not a single survivor remained, and Israel occupied the land. And there's story after story after story of the Israelites being empowered by God not to have fear, but to be bold in what they were told to do. And I think that boldness is something that we kind of skirted the edges of it here this evening, but so many times we're not bold in our testimony. We're not bold in what we're doing with people. We don't have a boldness to go out and say, "Hey, I could help you with that. Let me spend some time with you. Let me share with you what a difference Christ could make in your life." And there's something that holds us back from doing that so many times, and we miss those opportunities. Those are really golden opportunities that God has placed out there before us. And I fear God in so many opportunities that I missed. That I missed an opportunity He had out there for me, and I just kind of blew by it. I didn't really see it. I didn't pay attention. I was too busy, doing something else. I didn't take those moments And it's the moments that we have so many times. You can be in a meeting, you can be somewhere. I was in a meeting this morning. It was a very serious meeting in town. And to take the moment when someone else was speaking, it gives you a moment to be able to pray. Because they're talking, you can be listening, but you can also be praying as you're going through and listening to, but then it gives you a chance to bring God into the conversation, because He wants to be there with us. He wants to help us through those situations. And I think we miss those a lot of times. I know that I have. So let's go then to Deuteronomy 7:18. You must destroy all the nations which the Lord your God delivers into your hands. Have no pity. Do not worship their gods. If you do, it will be a sad day for you. Verse 17, perhaps you will think to yourself, how can we ever conquer these nations that are so much more powerful than we are? But don't be afraid of them. Just remember what the Lord God, your God, has done to Pharaoh and all the lands of Egypt. So reminiscent, and I don't mean to be political at all, but so much is what's happening today in our world. This very same thing is going on, and if we can be, it's really going to be amazing to see what all this comes to, because it's a sad day. God has blessed this country in so many unique ways and given us all opportunity way beyond what we deserved or ever imagined, and yet we still have such incredible things that go on. But part of the reason that these examples, I think, are laid out for us is that there were different, and there are different ways of people in the world thinking that, if we're not careful, that are brought into our country, and it's going to really hurt us at some point if it hasn't already. So I think, again, Moses begins to set the stage for that to happen. Okay, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 1. When you go to war and see before you vast numbers of horses and chariots, an army far greater than yours, don't be frightened. The Lord your God is with you, the same God who brought you safely out of Egypt. Before you begin the battle, a priest shall stand before the Israel army and say, listen to me, all you men of Israel, don't be afraid. As you go out and fight today, for the Lord your God is going with you. He will fight for you against your enemies, and He will give you the victory. Let's get down to Deuteronomy 31:8. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. So, again, there's so many times when it's easy to become dismayed. We lose a job, we lose a loved one, we lose our way, we do things that we wish we hadn't done, we say things that we wish we hadn't said. Our tongue is such a powerful, in many ways, ugly tool that spews things out, and the harm that it brings. If we could just harness, and James tells us so many times, if we could just harness the tongue, we might, be in a little better shape than we are. But we don't need to be dismayed about it. Let's go to Joshua, and this kind of gets into the historical books. So Joshua 10, verse 8. But let's start back at verse 4. Come and help me destroy Gabriel, he urged them, for they have made peace with Joshua and the people of Israel. So these 5 Amorite kings combined their armies for a united attack on Gibeon. The men of Gibeon hurriedly sent messengers ahead to Joshua at Gilgal. "Come and help your servants," they demanded. "Come quickly and save us, for all the kings of the Amorites who live in the hills are here with their armies." So Joshua and the Israeli army left Gilgal and went to rescue Gibeon. "Don't be afraid of them," the Lord said to Joshua, "for they are already defeated. I have given them to you to destroy. Not a single one of them will be able to stand up to you." So, you know, the power of that, those aren't just words that were written, and we remember, which I will confess, until I heard Rick explain that the Old Testament was here before the New Testament was here, I did not know that. But when you see that that word is there, that we don't need to be afraid of those things. I mean, it's really, really powerful. If we will just accept it and take it into, and wrap our minds around it, which I know is a difficult thing so many times for us to do. Okay, Ruth, one of my favorite books, Ruth 3:11, let's skip down there. So now she says, "And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask, for all that simply the my people know that you are a worthy woman." She had lost her ability a long way to really feel that she was worthy enough to do this, and she's being told. So it wasn't just, it's not just men telling an army, it's not just, you know, I think so many times we forget the really powerful, powerful women that are throughout God's Word, who are utilized by God in so many strategic ways, and so many times where it would not, those stories are placed there because of the difference. You know, Rick reminds us that women are jealous and the men are lustful, and some go the other way too, but not all of us. Just checking. But
Just hit me.
yeah. So for Ruth to have the sensitivities, and that's what's such a great thing about ladies in our lives and so forth, and just the finesse and the quality, the sensitivity that you bring into our lives are just so invaluable to soften the rough edges that so many of us have, and to be able to take it to a different level, to be able to say, wait a minute, you know, that's really not quite the way Katie reminds me every day. Just be quiet and listen a minute, and maybe you'll see this thing a little bit differently. And it's so true, and it really, and Ruth, I think, is one of the examples that God has used to do that. All right, Samuel 22, 1 Samuel 22. I think as I really began to understand David and Jonathan, I love the story of Jonathan. I love the character of a man who would give up. I mean, he was the anointed. He would have been the king, but he realized that God had anointed David to do that, and he was willing to give that up and sacrifice. And he lost his way at the end, but he was an amazing character. So this is a little snippet of mine. "Don't be afraid," Jonathan reassured him. "My father will never find you. You are going to be the king of Israel, and I will be next to you, as my father is well aware." So the two of them renewed their pact of friendship because they kind of split apart, and David stayed in Horsham while Jonathan returned home. So Jonathan was that role in his life really to the end, and then they both got off in some things that they shouldn't have gotten involved in, but that's a whole other story. Okay, let's go to 2 Samuel 9:7. Okay, but David said, "Don't be afraid. I've asked you to come so that I can be kind to you because of my vow to your father, Jonathan." Because of the vow to your father, Jonathan. Remember Jonathan had a son who was
Crippled.
yes, who was kind of a was a,
Crippled.
Yeah, because the nurse dropped him on the side.
so say it again.
Mephibosheth.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said.
He was
So,
invalid as
you
our
see,
guardian.
you see his name there in verse 8. I will restore you to all of the land of your grandfather Saul, and you shall live in your palace. And he fed him, took care of him, and so forth through the balance of his life. All right, let's go to Psalms 3:6. And we'll start off at 3:1. Psalms, 3rd chapter. All the Psalms are just so deep, and you just stop and listen and pay attention and hang on each word. Well, Lord, so many are against me. How many times in our lives have we felt that way about things? You know, how many times, you guys, Steve, you know, how many times did you feel so many people were against you? You know, it happens over and over and over. Rick can tell those stories. How many times, you know, you have so many people against, you know, in our lives. We've got a lot of testimony of a lot of things that were against us, but there are so many seek to harm me. I have so many enemies. So many say that God will never help me. But Lord, you are my shield, my glory, my only hope. You alone can lift my head, now bowed in shame. Verse 3, 4. I cried out to the Lord, and he heard me from the temple in Jerusalem. Then I lay down and slept in peace, and woke up safely. For the Lord was watching over me. And now, although 10,000 enemies surround me on every side, I am not afraid. I will cry out to him. If you go to Psalms 91, he will tell you, you know, 10,000, you're going to defeat, you know, all of them. All right, let's see. Let's go to Psalms 27:3. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Wow. When evil men come to destroy me, they will stumble and fall. Yes, though a mighty army marches against me, my heart shall know no fear. I am confident that God will save me. Verse 6. The one thing I want from God, the thing I seek most of all, is the privilege of meditating in his temple, living in his presence every day of my life, delighting in his incomprehensible perfections and glory. Boy, it just doesn't get any better than that. If we can capture that moment and live in God's glory, it's as good as it gets in our lives. And if we could, and again, it's kind of the course of the day. So many things happen. There's so many interruptions, so many disturbances. I used to, I got to confess, I still do in some cases. But people come in into our, first of all, just real quick, for those of you who don't know us and whatnot, this really isn't our place. God has given it to us for a season to take care of and to manage and so forth. And so it takes on a special connotation for us as we do these weddings and so forth, because we're looking for that pastor, that person who's doing a service and so forth. They're really speaking to these young people's lives, and they're not always young people, but a lot of them are millennials and so forth, and they're still wondering where they're going in life. But to be able to take it and spend that time with these people and get to know them a little bit, and then get to see them come together as a couple. I mean, a lot of times, until we started doing this, I'd probably been to 3 weddings in my life. But now we do, 5 or 6 or 7 in a weekend, and so you you start to lose track, and they all start to kind of look alike. But yet the ones who really have a relationship stand out. You remember them. I mean, the gal who came in, what's her name? And she's getting married. Came in, Jessica. This gal is just, you just would want to sit there and watch, you know, what her life is. If you could just watch it unfold, it would be a tremendous opportunity to see what God is going to do in their life and how that, you know, how that works. And then you got those who are still stumbling and mumbling. Let's go to Psalms 91, which is, if there's no other psalm that you want to remember, that's the one that you need to really focus on, because there's so much said, and we won't do the whole psalm, but we'll just start at the beginning in verse 1 of 91. We live within the shadow of the Almighty, sheltered by the God who is above all gods. This I declare, that He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I am trusting Him. For He rescues you from every trap, and protects you from a fatal plague. He will shield you with His wings. They will shelter you. His faithful promises are your armor. Now you don't need to be afraid of the dark anymore, nor fear the dangers of the day, nor dread the plagues of darkness, nor disasters in the morning. I was lucky enough, right after the fall of the Berlin Wall, I got to go to Russia with the pastor and some people, and we went out into the interior of, and we didn't realize, you land at the airport in Moscow, and the airport's modern and so forth, and as soon as you got 100 yards outside, it was like driving into the South in the 30s. I mean, it was just dilapidated and run down and so forth. And that's the way it was all the way into Moscow itself. And you realize that lots of things could have happened before the fall of the wall, because they really didn't have a whole lot. But there were some believers there, and we went out to one of the, is it dachas, or what do they call the places that the wealthy went to. They had these homes and places out on lakes and so forth. There was this believer family, and they invited us all out to have lunch. And then we ended up doing a baptism in this river with a group of Russians. That the river was, you know, it was flowing pretty good. You know, maybe they're trying to get rid of it. But I remember coming back out of the water after we had submerged several Russian people. I remember seeing this hen, and I remember when she got kind of spooked, and she ran, and she got up, and all of a sudden there was probably 10 or 12 chicks that ran out from underneath this hen. And then she went over in another corner, and the wings of her protected these little chicks. And I often, when I read this, I often think of that. He's going to protect you with his wings. And you think of animals and all these things that there's so many illustrations like that are so, at least to me, and I'm not the brightest bulb, but that really have a lot of meaning, you know, because it's significant that God does that for us, and He shows us those examples of how even He knows the feather on every bird, He knows the hair. I used to have some, knew every one of those, and I hope He knew the ones that left. But knowing that, you just realize how much God loves us and how much He does care for us. And let's close with, we'll go to the New Testament for just a second. In Matthew, let's go over to Matthew chapter 14. 14, 26, and 27. And this is the story of the disciples out on the water, and Jesus is not with them. And I don't know, it was like the other day after that storm that we had here, we got up in the morning, and it was so foggy, you know, you couldn't see the hood of your car, you know. And that reminds me of this story, because they did not see Jesus come walking out on the water. He just kind of appeared out of the cloud, not the clouds, but the cumulus or hummus or whatever it is that comes off, whatever it is that comes off of the water. So when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." So, you know, no matter where we find ourselves, if we just keep reminding ourselves, it's not, it is Michael W. Smith, right? There you go. I was just testing these. But if you get a chance, I mean, it's a great song to start your day with. It's just really will resonate with you as you spend your time with God in your